Looks like that reversal signal is holding strong, and that's why it's important for today that we go over some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and Nvidia. So let's get right into it. Now that signal we were talking about was the difference between the SPY and the Qs. The SPY is making an upward move like this, while the Qs is actually making a downward move. And that divergence between the two has been a signal for some bounces and some full-on reversals in this market when it does show its face. So we really want to pay attention to it, and we're seeing some downward pressure at this point. But on the SPY, I just wanted you to note right here that this MACD has not curled over. We're not seeing those red impressions on the histogram just yet, and we haven't even tested the bottom of that weekly range. So we really want to pay attention to these weekly ranges because they're going to be very important as we look at the individual stocks. SPY on the hourly, what we need to pay attention to, we're still in that positive territory. We really haven't started that negative trend on the SPY just yet. We really need to see if we can take out this low and start some kind of downward trend, meaning we get this high up here, and maybe this actually does break down and we get some bounce off of this weekly range here, and we set up a lower high. We really need that to be set up at this point. Looks like as of right now, we are seeing some flagging, so we could head to the downside, but you are still within that positive territory. So if this MACD does curl up, you can come up and test this high, and you can even maybe make another point of reference before we actually break down further. But we were paying attention to that difference between the SPY and the Qs, and the difference here as of today is the Qs actually did roll over and give us that red bar on the histogram on the MACD. So we really need to pay attention to that, but we are seeing that support come in at that 20-day moving average, which is something that we mentioned. Now, if we go down into an hourly, you're just going to see that series of lower highs, right? We're getting these lower highs in here, and we're getting those lower lows. So you can see that negative trend, and the fact that on the MACD we're actually down into negative territory is a good sign that we are heading a little bit lower. So we really want to pay attention to what happens tomorrow, because are we going to come up and maybe fill this gap? Are we going to test this high? Or are we going to see further breakdown? And right now, because we do have this negative trend intact, and if we do remain in this negative territory, you will see this negative trend just continue over time. Now, as we look at Apple, I wanted to mention its weekly range. This white line right here is actually the bottom of that range, and we do like to land above that, right? 68% of the time, this is the bottom of that, and you can see how that support comes in even when we do break out of I would say this flagging structure, right? So even though we are still within this structure, you can notice that we do touch the bottom here of that weekly range and get some support from there. And we want to just pay attention to this, right? As we are close to that positive territory, are we going to come make another point of reference? But that's what I was saying. We need that dramatic selling. And that's exactly what ended up happening this morning, which is very good to see. But we really need to break out of this overall structure and start to head to lower levels in order for that negative trend to continue. We need to get some deeper levels in this MACD. Now, we did go over the bullish case. We're still not out of the woods. We're bouncing off that 20 on the Qs, right? So we need to pay attention. If this actually does start to break to the upside, are we going to actually take out this high and start a new trend? Okay, so we need to pay attention to that. If this does curl up into positive territory, we need to see if it is able to reject off of this trend line. If it's able to reject off of that trend line, that means a big thing, because you're not going up to test this high. You're not making a new high to start some kind of new trend. So that's what you want to pay attention to in the bullish side of things. And then the bearish side, you really just need this structure to start to break down, right? We need another dramatic sell-off to get out of this structure in order to head to lower levels at this point. Amazon, yesterday we were pointing out how you have this high here, you have a lower high, and now you possibly have another lower high. We stated that you could pop up into this area as you are creeping into positive territory, but we break down and we remain on the MACD in negative territory on the hourly. Okay, so this is just something that we really need to pay attention to, because you do have lows and lower lows at this point. So is this going to continue, or are we going to come up and maybe fill this gap and then start to break down to lower levels? So it's just something that we really need to pay attention to. Our stock's going to break down further tomorrow. It's a possibility, but we do get data in the morning, so we want to pay attention to that actual reading that comes out and how the market reacts to that reading of the JOLTS data. Now, one stock that wasn't necessarily seeing as big of a breakdown was Tesla, and we're still within this consolidation, right? We did get this pop out, but we come right back into it, and you see that price is getting tighter and tighter, right? We're starting to get tight again, so we're looking for a big move, and maybe that data tomorrow is able to give this some direction. Okay, so what this means is if this is able to curl up into positive territory, there's kind of, three scenarios that could play out to the bullish side, which would just be, do we come up and set up some kind of lower high at this point, kind of solidify a negative trend and then break below this area that's been pretty important for some time, right? This area is pretty important at this point. So we want to pay attention to that. The other things that we could say is if it does get into positive territory, do we come and test this high? Do we come and test this high and make another point of divergence between here? So does that happen? And then the third scenario would just be if we actually take out that high and get another retest. So if we do come up and get another retest, that is possible at this point. I'm not necessarily thinking that's going to happen. I think all these negative trends are starting to add up, and we're going to see Tesla break below this level very soon. Nvidia on the hourly, we were talking about this falling wedge, but we were saying, we're in that negative trend, and Nvidia's really led this market with this high here, and we get a lower high, we have another lower high, we have lows, we have lower lows, and we have lower lows again. Okay, so this has really been leading the market, and we were stating how this is a bullish falling wedge, so we'd want to see if it's able to, see that dramatic selling come in and break to the downside, which looks like that was our answer. We stated how it could fall up to the upside, maybe start some kind of trend to go up, but at this point you are seeing that breakdown, which is kind of a solidified notification of this negative trend, right? So this negative trend has begun. It doesn't mean that we can't, continue to head up before getting another lower high at this point, but you do have this consolidation in here, so it is a pretty good probability that we're going to see this head to lower levels. Now, the other thing is this 459.54 isn't any kind of range or anything like that. It's just a support level, and you notice that we gap, right pretty much at it and gap and kind of push below it, and we're struggling to buy above it at this point. So it's just an area that I found as pretty important for this stock. A lot of support, a lot of resistance in this area. So the fact that we're gapping kind of below it, and then now we'll have to see if we are able to use it as resistance to head lower at this point. The VIX, we were just stating how these Bollinger Bands are getting really tight, and we look like we're going to get some kind of explosive move, whether we do come test that 12-12 first, or whether it comes in now, you're getting an actual closing bar above the 9-day moving average, which is a good sign that volatility is coming back in. And the most important thing, you're getting that crossing on the MACD. So we get that crossing on the MACD, and we're starting to see volatility possibly coming back into this market this week with a bunch of negative trends starting. The other thing we don't talk about a lot is the dollar, and I just wanted to point out that the dollar has not crossed on its MACD yet, but it is, as of right now, taking back that 9-day and maybe taking back the 200 at the end of the day here. So we really have to pay attention to the dollar, because when the dollar goes up, stocks go down, okay? So we want to pay attention. Does the dollar cross on the daily, and is it able to get into some positive territory to really get some steam behind it and give us some kind of pullback? Now, rates have not crossed on their MACD. The 10-year yield has not crossed on its MACD. We're getting a green bar, but we're seeing that upward pressure, and then it's kind of going back down at this point. So it's important to look at the comparison to TLT, and you'll notice that TLT is still within this wedging. So TLT is still within this wedging. You're looking like you're getting some kind of indecision day, which is interesting when we do have data coming out tomorrow that will affect TLT and the 10-year yield. So we want to see, is this wedge here going to play out to the downside, or are we going to see a move to the upside? And we'll find that out in the morning. So really pay attention to the data that's coming out tomorrow morning, because that's overall, I think, what's going to move these stocks. So the main takeaway for today is we're seeing those negative trends really begin, and we're waiting for the SPY to really catch up to the Qs. So that signal is holding strong at this point. And if you do go back and look at yesterday's video, you're going to see how that signal between the Qs and the SPY divergence can be invalidated. Okay, it's important to know how it's invalidated, because if you do start to break that, you could be in another uptrend. But right now, we are in a downtrend. We're getting a series of lower highs, and so we look like we want to head to lower levels before we're able to base out. My camera's freezing and stuff, but thank you guys so much for watching. I do have my course, which is going to be 50% off until 2024. So that's down there in the description. And then if you do want those weekly ranges for the individual stocks, that is down on my Patreon and everything. So if you do want to support the channel, I really thank you if you already have. And if you want to in the future, just go look. There's a little link down in the description there. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you guys have a great night and all the luck in the world trading tomorrow. All right, peace.